What is the difference between Hades and hell? Is there any difference? There are some who consider the two words to be interchangeable and referencing the same place. However, as we search the Scriptures, we discover that these are two distinct places. One is temporary and one is eternal. There's some confusion that's been caused by mistranslation. I think some of the confusion that exists about the differences between Hades and hell is due to the mistranslation of Hades as hell in the King James Version of the Bible. For some reason, the translators of this widely used version of the Bible chose to translate both the Greek words Hades and Gehenna as hell. Consider a few examples of this from the King James Version. In Matthew chapter 16 and verse 18, Jesus said, "And I also say unto thee, that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." In Luke chapter 16 and verse 23, Jesus taught, "And in hell he lift up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom." And then in Acts chapter 2 and verse 31, Peter said, "He, seeing this before, spake of the resurrection of Christ, that his soul was not left in hell, neither his flesh did see corruption." Admittedly, I know very little about the Greek language. However, a proper evaluation of these passages will conclude that the Greek term for Hades simply does not refer to the same place the Greek term for hell refers to. Yet, by simply following the way in which the King James Version has handled the word hell in these passages, individuals have misunderstood the differences in these two places. And some have even concluded that Jesus Christ spent time in the fires of hell. This is absolutely false. Therefore, let's spend the remainder of our time in this study trying to rightly divide the Scriptures and understand the differences between Hades and hell. Hades is the temporary realm of the dead. Hades is the Greek term, and the English term then has not been translated. Yet, as you search the Scriptures, you should observe that Hades is not an eternal place of punishment. Instead, it's a temporary spiritual realm in which everyone who has died exists today. And as we'll see, this place contains two separate parts or sections. One is a place of comfort. The other is a place of torment. We learn many things about Hades from Jesus' teaching about the rich man and Lazarus in Luke chapter 16, verses 19 through 31. Let's consider verses 19 through 26 specifically. Jesus teaches, "There was a certain rich man who was clothed in purple and fine linen, and fared sumptuously every day. But there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, full of sores, who was laid at his gate, desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. So it was that the beggar died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. And being in torments in Hades, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. Then he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. But Abraham said, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things, but now he is comforted, and you are tormented. And besides all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that those who want to pass from here to you cannot, nor can those from there pass to us." Though the King James Version translates this passage in a way that puts the rich man in torments in hell, all the other translations I'm familiar with have it as Hades, which is the Greek word that's used in the passage. Still, we need to consider other points from this passage to help us see whether this refers to an eternal place of fire and brimstone or a temporary place for all who have died, both the evil and the good. Consider that this was a place where both Lazarus and the rich man went after they died. While the text does not specifically identify Lazarus as being in Hades, as it does with the rich man, the conclusion is obvious from the Scriptures. First, consider that the rich man could see Lazarus, but there was a great gulf that was fixed so that none could pass from one side to the other. They were in the same spiritual realm, if you will. Second, this place of comfort Lazarus experienced after his physical death was the same place Jesus went whenever he died. In Luke chapter 23 and verse 43, Jesus told one of the two thieves hanging on the cross beside of him, "Assuredly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." Then in Acts chapter 2 and verse 31, Peter said that Jesus' soul was not left in Hades, but was raised from the dead. Clearly, Jesus did not go to hell whenever he died, according to the mistranslation of the King James Version that we saw earlier. Instead, he went to paradise in Hades. This is the same place that's identified in Luke 16 and verse 22 as Abraham's bosom. So the picture that is presented of Hades in this passage is a spiritual realm in which there is one section of comfort and one section of torment. The torment is described in detail in this passage. Lazarus said that he was, or excuse me, the rich man said that he was tormented in the flames so much that he desired for even a drop of water to be provided for relief. Yet no relief was provided. Furthermore, the passage depicts that there is a great gulf or chasm that separates the two sections so that the souls in one place cannot go to the other. And verses 27 through 31 also present the fact that these souls cannot return to the earth by their own choosing. And finally, let's consider Revelation 20, verses 13 and 14 to underscore a key difference between Hades and hell. This passage that depicts the great judgment scene says, "The sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death and Hades delivered up the dead who were in them, and they were judged, each one according to his works. Then death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire." This is the second death. Notice that there will be a time when both death, that is physical death, and Hades have no more use, and they'll be cast into the lake of fire. So please understand that this passage underscores the temporary nature of the Hadean realm. It is not the eternal abode of either the good or the evil. Therefore, since Hades is the temporary spiritual realm of the dead, there are billions of people who exist in this place today. And if you die prior to the return of Jesus Christ, you'll also spend time in one of Hades' two sections. It should be your desire then to live in such a way that you will be granted rest and peace when your life on this earth ends, and so that you can avoid the punishment that would be given to those who have lived in rebellion against the Lord. Next, I want us to understand that hell is the place of eternal punishment. Gehenna is the Greek word that is most commonly translated as hell. It has reference to the valley of Hinnom that was south of the city of Jerusalem. It was this place where people would bring all manner of rubbish and dead animals to be burned. Yet while this word had reference to a literal place near Jerusalem, Jesus used this word to present the picture of future punishment for the wicked. Consider some passages in which Jesus used this Greek word. In Matthew chapter 5 and verse 22, he says, "But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire." In Matthew 5 and verse 29, it says, "If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell." In Matthew 10 and verse 28, it says, "And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." Now, Jesus was not using this word to identify the literal valley of Hinnom. For, as evident from Matthew 10, verse 28, a person's soul could never be destroyed by the literal fires of that place. Instead, Jesus was speaking about another place of punishment, an eternal torment. Consider how this place is depicted in other passages. First, consider that Jesus spoke about a punishment that those who were not obedient to God would experience. In Jesus' parable of the talents in Matthew 25, verses 14 to 30, Jesus said that the unprofitable servant would be cast into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, verse 30. Then in the following picture of the judgment day in verses 31 through 46, consider the punishment Jesus said would be given to those who would not be found faithful. In verse 41, then he will say to those on the left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Verse 46 says, and these will go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Similarly, the Apostle Paul wrote concerning those who were not obedient to the gospel of Jesus Christ and did not know God. He said that these individuals would have vengeance taken on them in flaming fire when Jesus returns. They would be punished with everlasting destruction from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his power. 2 Thessalonians 1, verses 7 through 9. And look also at the lake of fire and brimstone that's depicted in the book of Revelation. Revelation 20 and verse 10 identifies that the devil will be cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, as we also saw from Matthew 25, verse 41. And then after picturing the great and final judgment, Revelation 20 and verse 15 says that anyone not found written in the book of life will be cast into the lake of fire. And Revelation 21 verse 8 depicts this place and identifies its inhabitants. But the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Surely this punishment is different than what the Bible identifies as Hades. Although Hades includes one portion of punishment, and the punishment is also pictured by fire, it is a temporary place. However, the punishment of hell is clearly identified as being eternal. There is no escape from it. Furthermore, though individuals are now in Hades, mankind will not be cast into the fires of hell until after the judgment. And finally, unlike Hades, which had a part of comfort and a part of torment, there is no comforting side to hell. Hell is the place of eternal punishment for those who did not obey God during their earthly lives. The obedient will spend eternity in heaven. So what is the difference between Hades and hell? When the Bible talks about Hades and hell, it refers to two completely different places. Hades is a temporary place where those who have died exist today. Hell is an eternal place of punishment for those who fail to obey God.